Looking to take your financial knowledge to the next level? You're in the right place. Welcome to Ask Ralph, offering accounting, technical, and financial advice. Whether you're looking to save taxes or improve your business, he's got you covered. Here's your host of Ask Ralph, Ralph Eastup Jr.
Welcome back to the Ask Ralph Show. Thought I'd talk a few minutes about giving your 401k a checkup. This is a great time to talk about your 401k plan. There's an excellent article in U.S. News and World Report by Rebecca Lake. It was on January 3rd, 2018. And it talks about giving your 401k a New Year's checkup. And, in the news, a lot of people have talked a lot about, how their 401ks are growing. But a problem is, it's noted here, is Scarborough Capital Management found that 43% of retirement savers spend less than 2 hours per year managing their money, and 25% said they lacked a basic know-how about their 401ks. Now that worries me. As a person involved in finance, that worries me that people are putting their hard-earned money into a 401k plan and not even aware of what's going on with it and may not even understand the nuances that go into that. That's one of the things that this fellow, Barry Kozak, a consultant with October 3 Consulting in Chicago, says, they have apathy. If you get in the habit of looking at all the benefits, rights, and features of your plan, you actually start to appreciate it more. So you can't just let this thing sit on the shelf and kind of fester on its own. You need to understand it. All of your employers have to provide access to someone that can help you explain it. You need to understand all the individual parts of that. So what are some things as part of our checkup that we can do this year? Well, the first thing is let's take a look at our contribution rates. What am I talking about here? The contribution rate is the amount that you've allocated out of your paycheck, when you get paid to put into the retirement plan. Now, a lot of times people will just say, well, I'm going to go ahead and put in the default amount, and that could be anywhere from 1% to 8%. That's what it was in 2016, the default rate. And and what they found is that a consulting firm named Kalin did a survey and found that the average rate was 4.2%. But the problem with that is most people need like 10 to 20% to really accumulate enough retirement savings so that they're going to be set for retirement. So for example, what this means is that someone with $1 million in a 401k at retirement can withdraw $30,000 to $40,000 annually, which is a much lower amount than most investors realize. So, if you're a person that makes, as a family, let's say you're making $50,000 or $60,000 a year, you don't realize how much you've got to have set aside in order to be able to meet that same amount of income in retirement. And listen, in my practice, what I have found, and this was sort of shocking to me as my clients have, started to get older and a lot of them are starting to retire, is that the old adage was, well, I'm going to need less money in retirement. But what I'm finding is people actually generally need more. Why is that? Well, there's a couple reasons for that. Number one, medical costs. As you get older, your medical costs go up. Number two, you've got more free time. So you may want to go do things. And number three, you might be helping out the earlier generations, your kids or grandkids. So this is something to take a look at. How much are you really putting aside? Can you put more aside? The next part of this thing as part of our checkup is to review our allocation, what the fancy financial people call an asset allocation. That's one part that's really important. A lot of people just say, well, just put me into the default investments. Well, that's fine. But if you don't know what those investments are, do you realize what your risk is? A good financial planner or a good financial advisor is going to take a look at this and say, what are your financial goals? What things do you want to be investing in? And all of this comes down to your investment horizon. And what I mean by that is, if you're 22 years old and you're starting out with your 401k, your investment horizon is huge. You've got a long time to work before you're going to go to retirement. But let's say you're in your upper 50s or even early 60s. You've got to really laser beam focus on your investment model and say, where are my investments right now? What am I into that could present risk? You can't afford that long-term risk at that age. You need to take a hard look and say, I need to start pulling back on my investments and making sure I'm finding something that is suitable for the risk tolerances I have. And the only way you're going to do that is if you study your 401k and allocate your assets accordingly. No one's expected to hit home runs on everything that you have in your portfolio. And that's why you need to meet with a good financial advisor, a financial planner, and sit down and go over, what's in my investment portfolio. I am amazed how many clients come in. I'll say to them, okay, well, what's in your investment portfolio? I don't know. whatever the advisor, said I should invest in. And, it looks like it's growing. Well, that's fine. And if there's a 25% increase in the Dow Jones, I would hope your 401k is growing, but have you protected yourself against those downturns? What is your investment horizon? Do you have enough time to recover if you're all in a tech sector, for example? And I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not going to get into individual financial advice, but you need to spread that risk and look for the overall return on your investment. You can't be greedy in this. The next thing as part of your checkup, you want to talk about your tax situation. And what I'm talking about here, and I did a show a few weeks ago about this, is, does the 401k make sense for you still? Or are you better off looking at going into a Roth 401k or a hybrid of the two? There are advantages in both plans, but you've got to sit down and take a look at that. You put all your money into a traditional 401k, that's fine. When you go to retire, you're going to have to take that money out and you're going to pay tax at that point. And what did I say a few minutes ago? That I'm seeing more and more clients that are having the same amount of income needs in retirement. So the benefit of putting that money away today, you got the benefit of what they call the time value of money. So you've got the benefit of those earnings, growing out there. But when you're taking that money out, you may be in a really bad tax situation. So you got to look at that. And that's where, I've never been a big fan of the Roth, but with the Roth 401k, I'm starting to come around to this. And, the idea, for example, my son just joined the military. And one of the things that, he called me the other day and he says, "Hey, Dad, I'm new to this, but, they've got all these options on the military website for retirement. What do I do?" And I said to him, "Son, well, you're 20 years old." I said, "You've got, we talked a few minutes ago about this time horizon. He's got a huge time horizon. He can afford to put his, his money in whatever basket he could find. Now, clearly he's got risk tolerances as well, but, he's got a huge time horizon." He says to me, "Well, how much should I put aside?" I said, "Put the most you can aside." And he says, "Well, okay, well, I don't have a family now. My debts are basically paid for with my first paycheck." I said, "Well, then you need to really, put as much as you can aside." And what we did for him is we balanced that between a traditional 401k and a Roth 401k. And, he didn't really understand it, but I was able to explain it to him. But, that presents a great option for someone, because then those Roth, so let me take a second to just explain it. So with the Roth 401k, you put that money in, it's after tax. So you're not getting the benefit of it right now. But assuming that you keep that money for the requirements, when that money comes back to you in retirement, there's no tax consequence. So if you've got a good financial advisor, they should be able to put together a plan for you of how to allocate these things. But you can't just put your head in the ground and assume that your 401k is going to take care of itself. And that's the moral to the story today, folks. Take the time to look at your 401k and do this checkup, and ask the tough questions. And the last one here, I don't have a lot of time to talk about it, is the fees. Look at the plan fees and say, what? Can I do better by not taking the 401k at work and doing, an IRA on my own? Well, I certainly hope this is helpful, and I do encourage all of my clients to get with a financial advisor and take a look at your 401k plan.
You've been listening to Ask Ralph, brought to you by Saggio Accounting Plus. Please subscribe to and rate our podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, and leave us a rating and review. Our podcast is produced by Carolyn Peters. Thank you for listening, and be sure to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at Ask Ralph Media. You can also hear me each week on 1450 WILM and on 1410 WDOV in Delaware, and on the iHeartRadio app. Submit your questions or ideas for future shows by sending an email to AskRalph@AskRalph.com.
The information contained in this episode of Ask Ralph is based on data available as of the date of its release. Saggio Accounting Plus and Ask Ralph Media Inc. is under no obligation to update this content if changes occur. Applying this information to your specific situation requires careful consideration of all facts and circumstances, and any information provided is not to be considered as financial, tax, or legal advice. Please consult your tax advisor or attorney before acting on any material covered.